At some point, most of us learned the same lesson. Be liked, and you'll be safe. Smile enough, agree enough, never push too hard, and people will keep you close. It works for a while, until you realize the price. The more you shape yourself around other people's approval, the less of yourself is actually left. You don't notice it happening. It's gradual. One small compromise here, one swallowed opinion there, one more time you laughed at something that wasn't funny. And slowly, without any single dramatic moment, you become someone whose entire sense of worth lives outside themselves, in other people's reactions, their moods, their validation. Psychologists call it approval dependency. I'd call it a slow leak. You keep functioning, but something essential keeps draining out. The cruel irony is that it doesn't even work. People don't respect those who need their approval. They may like them in the way you like something comfortable and familiar. But respect is different. Respect is what you give to someone who has edges, who holds their ground, who occasionally disappoints you and doesn't apologize for it. So the real question isn't, do they like me? It's, do they respect me? And if you're honest with yourself, you probably already know the difference between the two. Kindness is not the same as fear. There's a version of niceness that comes from genuine warmth, and there's a version that comes from terror. The second kind is far more common than people admit. You stay agreeable because conflict feels dangerous. You over-explain, over-apologize, over-accommodate, not because you're generous, but because some part of you believes that if you stop, people will leave, or judge you, or decide you're too much. Psychologists call this self-abandonment. Every time you trade your honest response for someone else's comfort, you abandon yourself a little. It accumulates. After years of it, many people genuinely don't know what they actually think or want anymore, because they've spent so long curating what's acceptable to everyone else. Here's the part that stings. People feel this in you. Not consciously, maybe, but they feel it. And rather than inspiring affection, it tends to inspire a quiet, low-grade contempt. Not because they're cruel, but because humans are wired to sense insecurity and respond to it accordingly. You didn't train people to disrespect you through some grand failure. You did it slowly, through 1,000 small moments where you said yes and meant no, where you made yourself smaller so someone else could feel bigger. It can be undone. But it starts with something uncomfortable. Saying no to something small today. Not as a strategy, just as practice. Just to remind your nervous system that the world continues turning, even when you don't make everyone happy. What Machiavelli actually meant. Machiavelli gets misread constantly. People hear, "It's better to be feared than loved," and picture a tyrant. But that's not what he was describing. He was describing something more subtle. Affection is fragile, and respect is durable. People's fondness for you shifts with their mood, their circumstances, their self-interest. But their respect, if you've earned it genuinely, tends to hold. The distinction matters because most of us have been building the wrong thing our whole lives. We've been optimizing for likability when we should have been building something more solid. A clear sense of who we are, what we stand for, and what we won't tolerate. That's what psychologists mean by psychological groundedness. Not dominance over others, but a kind of internal stability that doesn't require external confirmation. The people who walk into rooms and immediately command attention usually have it. They're not performing. They're just not looking for your approval. And somehow that makes everyone want to give it to them anyway. We were taught the opposite. Obedience was rewarded. Compliance was praised. And so we grew into adults who flinch every time we're about to hold a boundary, who hear a voice that says, "Careful, don't upset anyone, stay likable." That voice isn't wisdom. It's old conditioning that outlived its usefulness. Being liked feels good in the moment. Being respected feels different, quieter, more solid, more yours. And nobody respects someone who hasn't first decided to respect themselves. The addiction you don't see. Pay attention the next time someone doesn't respond to your message as quickly as you expected, or doesn't laugh at something you said, or disagrees with you in front of other people. Notice what happens in your body. If there's a spike of anxiety, a pull to fix it, a need to explain yourself or smooth it over, that's the addiction. That's what externalized self-worth feels like from the inside. Your sense of who you are has become dependent on constant incoming signals from other people telling you you're okay. It's exhausting. And it's self-defeating, because the more visibly you need someone's approval, the less inclined they are to give it to you. You don't need more confidence, in the motivational poster sense of the word. You need less investment in how things land. Less attachment to whether this particular person, in this particular moment, thinks well of you. Conflict isn't the threat it feels like. Avoiding it at all costs is the actual threat, because every time you do, you teach yourself that your own perspective is less important than keeping the peace. Do that enough times and you lose the thread of who you actually are. So try something small. Say the true thing today, even if it lands awkwardly. Hold the boundary, even if someone looks annoyed. Walk away from something that doesn't serve you, even if it feels uncomfortable. Not heroically, just quietly. Once. And then again tomorrow. The people who don't need the room. There are people who walk into a conversation without needing anything from it. They're not cold. They're just complete. Their mood doesn't hinge on whether you approve of them. They can sit with silence, absorb a criticism, hold an unpopular position, and none of it visibly rattles them. That quality, non-reactivity, psychologists call it, is one of the most quietly powerful things a person can develop. It's not indifference. It's stability. It communicates, without a word, that this person's center of gravity is inside them, not in the shifting opinions of whoever happens to be in the room. When you react emotionally to every small social signal, you hand other people the controls, and they feel it even when they'd never articulate it. Calmness, on the other hand, reads as authority, not performed authority. The real kind, the kind that comes from not needing to prove anything. A simple practice worth trying. Talk less, watch more. Not as a tactic, just as a way of being present. You'll say things that matter more because you've actually been paying attention. And you'll become harder to read, which, as it turns out, is one of the more useful things you can be. The character you buried. Most people don't have a character problem. They have a permission problem. Somewhere along the way, you learned that certain parts of you, the opinionated parts, the parts that push back, the parts that take up space, were better kept quiet. And you got good at keeping them quiet. So good that eventually, you may have forgotten they were there. When you stop needing universal approval, those parts start to surface again. You become more direct, more willing to disappoint people. Paradoxically, more interesting, because there's actually something there to push against. But it doesn't happen cleanly. There's a period where the old patterns resist. where your brain tells you you're being arrogant and selfish too much, where the people who preferred the previous version of you make their displeasure known. That discomfort is not a sign you're doing something wrong. It's a sign the pattern is breaking. The world doesn't reward malleability. It rewards people who know what they think and say it plainly, who know what they need and ask for it directly, who know what they won't accept and hold that line without drama. You were never meant to make everyone comfortable. You were meant to be honest, where it actually ends up. There's a particular kind of freedom that comes from genuinely not needing people's approval. Not as a pose, not as a defense mechanism, but as a real, settled state. Psychologists sometimes call it self-anchoring. You know who you are, regardless of who's in the room or what they think of you. When you get there, a few things happen that nobody really prepares you for. Some people leave, the ones who were only comfortable around you because you were easy to manage, the ones who confused your agreeableness for loyalty. Their departure isn't a tragedy, it's information. And something else happens too. The things you were chasing, real respect, real connection, genuine influence, start showing up more naturally. Not because you've become someone different, but because you've stopped performing someone you're not. The question worth sitting with every day is this: what would I actually do right now if I weren't thinking about how it would look? Then do that. Not perfectly. Not all at once. Just once today and once tomorrow, and slowly, over time, the gap between who you are and who you pretend to be starts to close. That's the whole thing, really. That's all it is.